Hey everyone, this is Jen, and you're watching BPD Woman. On this channel, you will learn how to more effectively live and manage with your borderline personality disorder, or if you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or if you just consider yourself a highly sensitive person that has trouble managing your emotions, you are in the right place. My goal is to help you achieve your goals, sharing my wisdom, insight, therapeutic experiences, and balancing and navigating the nuances of living with borderline personality disorder. My goal is to share with you something that therapists and psychologists cannot. And while I highly recommend a psychologist that specializes in personality disorders and highly recommend that you go through multiple rounds of DBT and practice whenever you can, I can answer one question that none of those psychologists cannot, which is, what's it like to live with borderline personality disorder? I was diagnosed over 20 years ago, and I believe I have lived with the disorder for the last 30 years. My goals in therapy have seen me reach all sorts of therapeutic outlets, including about 6 courses of DBT, inpatient, outpatient therapy, group therapy, one-on-one therapy. I've read books, I've done workbooks, I've written papers, I watch videos, I have a YouTube channel. You get it. I'm pretty committed. My approach is positive solution-based recovery strategies. Positive solution based. So no blaming or shaming or gaming or judging. It's just about learning to become more effective. If you're a family member or friend or coworker or just someone interested in the disorders that I mentioned, you're also in the right place, and you can get started with a playlist intended just for you and called Vids for the Family, so check it out. Well, if that all sounds good, could you do me a favor? There is a button below and it says subscribe. Could you hit subscribe and the bell below so you never miss a beat? I produce anywhere from 1 to 5 videos each week, always something new. So let's get going. Every now and then I do a shout out to my viewers, and it's called Calling for Video Suggestions. And probably maybe once every 3 to 6 months, I will put out a video entitled Calling for Your Video Suggestions. And a few of you responded to the last video call out that I put out there. And today we're going to focus our video on that response. And so I'm going to read this request verbatim. And then we're going to kind of break it down and talk about it a little bit. So this will be a little bit more of a relaxed, open forum. You can kind of consider this basically a little bit of my life experience and how I've managed to deal with some of the things that this viewer is asking. And so Sarah Morales asks, could you talk about how you became comfortable with rough patches, stagnation in life, sitting while you are highly anxious, and coping with being alone? Oh, and one more, how to stop obsessing over what people think of you, especially if this person was important to you at one point in your life. Thank you. Heart emoji. So there's about 4 or 5 different things in this request that Sarah's asking about, and I want to break it all down. Before we get started, I want to tell you that I've done several videos that I think would be good companion videos to this one that answer a little bit of what Sarah's asking about, and those are videos called Obsessive Rumination, How to Stop Worrying. I have another one called Am I Allowed? Asserting Yourself and Asking for What You Want. I also have several videos on anxiety as well, and how to deal with that. So check those out. And also, if you're familiar with DBT, I do have a few DBT videos that I've put out there, and that can kind of get you going in the right direction with skills. And I will be adding more of those as I go along with the channel. So if we break down what Sarah's asking here, she's essentially asking how I deal with rough patches, so kind of like stagnation in life, which could be a bunch of different things. She's asking me how I handle anxiety and how I handle being alone, and also how I can kind of control my obsessive rumination about what people think. And these are great questions, so thank you, Sarah, and they have kind of complex answers, so let's start breaking them down. So let's start with how I've dealt with stagnation and rough patches. And I'm not exactly sure what Sarah is referring to, but the way that I kind of take this in is rough patches could be a few things. You know, like this past year was a rough patch, and it was stagnated, wasn't it? I mean, everything kind of just had a pause button. Our social lives got put on pause. Our therapeutic lives maybe were impacted. Perhaps you couldn't see your counselor as much as you wanted to, and you probably couldn't see them in person. My social life got put on hold. There were a lot of things that I wanted to do that I couldn't do. My vacation plans, my business plans, everything sort of got put on pause. And so one of the first, I would say the thing that really ties this all in and how I got comfortable with this is patience. Patience, I think, really goes a long way. And if you are like me, one of the things that is complicating about having borderline personality disorder is that you want it now, you want it fast, you want instant gratification, you need an answer. Living throughout an environment where you grew up through instability and fear and not knowing what was going to come next, now you really want things to be even Steven, even though sometimes our behaviors might not look like that, right? Like we may be pushing people away, or we may be causing fights because we want intimate closeness, but we're trying to rip it apart so we don't have to deal with the fears of people leaving us. So the first thing is patience. And patience is a great word, but what does it really mean? Okay, well, it means that I tell myself things that have been built out of my self-esteem. So I will say something to myself like, okay, this is what's happening right now. It's not going to stay like this forever. What are some things that I can do to get me out of this stagnation? So I'm a big proponent of using your iPhone, and I've done a video about how your iPhone can help your BPD, or your Android, whatever, your phone, your computer, how it can help with your self-esteem and getting you out of BPD. And one of the things that I go back to is this thing that I call the I love me list. And I'll write out things that I love about me, or that maybe people have said about me. So I will write out that, I completed my college degree, I am really reliable now, and I wasn't always reliable. I'm funny. People think that I'm giving. I'm really good at planting flowers, right? It's just, you're basically building up a list of things that give you self-confidence, which not only, play into your self-esteem, but also kind of give you a large view of like, hey, look at all these things that I've accomplished. It's a slow, rough patch right now, but I'm getting there. The second part of this is remembering that there are just no overnight fixes, and there are no easy answers, and it's not something that just comes, right? And this could be applied to anything. I'm talking about BPD recovery a little bit. But it can be applied to anything, your educational growth, your business growth, your emotional growth, or your relationship growth. Your BPD recovery. Stagnation can come in many forms of your life. And so you must remember and tell yourself, okay, well, I didn't get this way overnight, and I'm doing the best I can, and I'm taking these steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's all I can do at one time. And again, that goes back to the first thing, which is patience. So even though you can be stagnated, there are things that you can do that I recommend doing that can keep you going forward. It's very easy to just kind of give up. When you're depressed, it's even harder to not give up. And okay, I'm just not going to do it, fuck it. Like, I'm just not going to do anything, why bother? Like, I don't have any money this month. Why should I bother trying to make money next month? Is to set small goals. And I've also done a video about goal board setting and, use your goal board and write down some goals, and then make them small goals. It's not something like, for instance, during this pandemic lockdown, I had an argument with a friend, and I was really confused about it. And, I didn't have a lot of people to reach out to, and we were locked down, and there was nothing I could really do. I wasn't with a therapist at that time, and I'm still not. And I thought, what can I do about this feeling right now? I don't want to feel like this. I gotta like process this. And that's how I started this channel. The very first video I did was about BPD and friendships. And it was all based about this experience that I'd had with this woman and how it was affecting me. And so I took this moment of stagnation, this rough patch, this like friendship that was breaking up essentially, combined with the pandemic and the financial stress. And I was like, okay, well, I can turn this into something positive. I can start talking about this. It's going to help me by me processing my feelings. And then it could also help other people. So the three things here are going back to your self-esteem, I love me list, reminding yourself what you like about you, telling yourself, okay, it's not going to get changed overnight, but I'm going to make some goals, and I'm going to work towards those goals, and I'm going to see what I can get done, and little by little. So I hope that answers that first part. And now let's go to Sarah's second question. So the second part of Sarah's question asks, how did I become comfortable, or could I talk about sitting still when you're highly anxious? This is a great one. And certainly if I have felt any other, I would say the top three feelings that I have felt most deeply dealing with borderline have been anger, anxiety, and sadness. And if you think about it, all three of them kind of go together. And sitting still when I'm highly anxious. Well, I will tell you, Sarah, that the way that I get out of, oh, hi, Kat, my co-host. The way that I get out or try to alleviate my anxiety is actually not by sitting still, but by getting moving or engaging in a different activity to pull me out of the anxiety. There's so many things that go into anxiety, and for me, obviously worry is one of them. But I think for those of us with borderline or any other emotional dysregulation disorder, most probably the feeling of the unknown. The unknown is so tricky and hard for us. Why? Well, most likely if you've been diagnosed with this personality disorder, you grew up in a very traumatic, unstable, invalidating, hurtful environment. Decades of abuse or trauma. One parent or both parents not being there physically, mentally, or financially, you feeling like you were the caretaker, right? You being exposed to things that you didn't know if one week your mama's going to have money and be sober, or the next week was she going to be drunk again and bring home another boyfriend from the bar, right? You didn't feel safe. And so if you do that over time, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, you grow up highly anxious, and you are searching for stability, and you want things to be even Steven. And if you were to tell that to someone looking into you as you're acting out on your BPD behaviors, and you might say to them, well, I really want to be with someone, and I don't want to feel sad, and I want to feel safe. They might be like, well, that's not how you act. Why do you push me away? Why do you argue with me? Why do you always question me? Why do you doubt me? Because those actions come out of anxiety. And so I actually don't sit still when I'm anxious. I rechannel that energy, because if you think of anxiety sort of like a soda bottle, and you shake up the soda bottle, it has all this energy and it needs to go somewhere. And sure, over time, if you just put it back in the fridge and you come back to open it an hour later, yeah, I'm sure like the pressure will have been absolved, and you could open it and it won't fly up in your face. Or you can start to slowly unscrew the top of that soda bottle and let off some of that pressure. And so I like to do a lot of different things to redirect my anxiety. I've done a video on an anxiety, and there's 3 questions that I ask myself, Sarah, that go in this order when I'm feeling really anxious or I'm really ruminating about something. And the first question I will ask myself is, am I creating my own suffering? Which means, am I worrying about something that's not happening right now? Am I jumping to a conclusion about something? Have I already made a conclusion about something and I don't have all of the answers? So is this worry coming out of my own creation? Okay. The second thing is, I ask myself, is this happening right now? So let's say you're worried about your boss being in trouble with your boss, and you're just certain that you're going to be in trouble with your boss, right? And you're worrying about it and worrying about it. Well, you can ask yourself the second question, which is it happening right now? And if it's not, then there's nothing that can be done about it right now. The only thing that you're doing is spinning your wheels and getting yourself more upset. And finally, the third component, it's not really a question, but it's a statement that I tell myself, which is, you got this. You got this, Jen. You can handle this. You can handle whatever comes your way. Okay, if my boss yells at me, I'll handle it. I'll deal with it. I'm masterful. I can get it. Another way that I like to handle anxiety is distract myself. And there's so many different ways to distract yourself. One of my go-to distraction is to exercise, because that gets a lot of physical energy out and you're almost kind of wearing yourself out of this feeling. But also doing something that really takes a lot of cognitive attention. So for me, I've used this example many times in my videos, which is watching a foreign language film that you are not fluent in that language. So they just put up this 6-part series on HBO. It's called Pray, Obey, Kill, and it's all in Swedish with subtitles. And so reading subtitles and watching the pictures and being involved, literally that is all you can do. That's the only activity you can do without looking away and missing something. So an activity like that really requires all of your attention. You could do a puzzle. Not my favorite, but I find that I can get really easily distracted doing a puzzle. But there are other cognitive heavy loads, playing Scrabble, playing a video game, doing some kind of dance routine. Like there's plenty, like if you just search YouTube for, dance workouts, like a ton of them come up. So, or you can focus on something else. You could put your energy and say, okay, well, I'm gonna put this away for now. I'm gonna put this in the locker, and instead I'm gonna work on my budget, or I'm gonna work on this project. So over the years as well, I've also gotten a lot better about compartmentalizing things. And what I mean by that is, if I'm starting to feel a anxious feeling or an angry feeling, or I can feel myself bubbling up or getting dysregulated, I will ask myself, I'll be inquisitive, and I will say, what is this about? Why am I feeling this way? Right? And if you can tap into why you're feeling this way, then you can begin to solve why you're feeling anxious, right? So earlier today I was feeling a little bit anxious, and it was because I hadn't received all of my payments from my invoices that I sent out for my business this week, and they have a cutoff time of 5 p.m. and that time was beginning to come, and I didn't hear from 2 clients. So I was like being anxious, and then I was getting a little worked up, and I was like, well, what the fuck? Like, are they just going to be rude? Are they going to ghost me? Like, what's going on? And then I thought, okay, all right, that's not reasonable. You were all on good terms with them last week. You're fine. All of your work has been excellent. Why don't you just do a quick follow-up text? And so I did. And then they both were like, oh my gosh, sorry. And they paid me right away. So doing an action like that, figuring out, okay, what is this feeling I'm feeling, and how can I go about changing it? And so for me, the way that I went about changing it was to reach out to these clients, and that absolved some of my anxiety. Let's go on to the third portion of Sarah's question. How do I cope with being alone? Whew, well, that is certainly a big one, isn't it? And it's not easy. And at different points of my life, I have felt wonderful about being alone, which I am right now. I feel fine about it. And then there have been times where I have felt so desperate not to be alone that I've allowed all kinds of people into my life, ne'er-do-wells and questionable people that shouldn't have come into my life. And the first thing, again, I'll go back to one of my first points, is that nothing comes overnight and nothing comes quickly. And it is something that takes a lot of time to process and to fix, and it's gradual, and there are no overnight fixes with these things. So many things go into being comfortable with being alone, and one of those is this differentiation that being alone doesn't mean you're lonely. I live alone. Essentially, I work for myself. I have interactions with other people, but primarily I don't have my family in my life, for good, healthy reasons. And so that's the lifestyle that I live. But I'm comfortable with it because I have my pets, and I have friends, and I have neighbors, and I have people that I can talk to, and I don't feel like I'm disconnected. And part of that also is making a point of putting myself out there, texting my friends, inviting them over for dinner. And, tomorrow I've invited a neighbor over for tea. We're going to have tea and sit on my balcony and eat muffins, So part of this is being okay with being alone. But let's talk about what that means. So for a long time, I was coming out of a lot of trauma. I didn't like being alone. The thought of living alone was frightening. I didn't think that I could, when I got divorced, I was really on my own and I had to support myself. And I thought, how am I ever going to get my own health insurance? How am I ever going to be able to pay my bills, right? And it was a lot of what ifs and oh my gosh. And being alone, coping with being alone also goes back to that first thing about stagnation, which is that self-esteem and inability to believe in yourself, that, okay, I can get things done. If you want to be around other people, of course, it's natural for us to want to link up together. That's human nature. Strength in numbers, making friends, making alliances, being a part of a group, feeling like you're wanted and a part of a community. Of course, that's human nature. That's just natural. That's normal. But there's also extremes, which borderlines can go into, right? And that's the kind of overwhelming someone and never letting them out of your sight because you're afraid they're going to leave or abandon you. And then there is the extreme opposite, which is they're going to leave me and abandon me, so I'm just going to isolate myself forever. And so it took many years and lots of DBT for me to, one, examine and get over this trauma of what had happened to me. And of course it lingers. The trauma lingers. Triggers linger. But why do I need to be around people? What does it do for me? Is it making me feel good? 10 years ago, I couldn't bear the idea of spending my birthday or Christmas alone. This year, I spent both Christmas and my birthday alone, and it was great. It was a fun day. It was wonderful. I relaxed. I had food that I liked. I got a massage. I got a pedicure. It was fantastic, right? It was really fun. I enjoyed my company. But to be okay with being alone, I think really requires that you're okay with who you are and that you feel healthy. Right? And that you are seeking the answers from within yourself and not from other people. I used to have these parties and birthday parties where 10 or 15 or 20 people would be invited. And yet I felt sad and alone. Even though I was surrounded by a group of people, I felt alone because I didn't feel really connected to them. I felt like we were cramming bodies in there, and it was content over context, right? And now I know that, okay, I'd rather spend my birthday with, one person that really means something to me, or do one fun thing, or not make a big deal of it. And over the years, I've been put in situations that have only sort of solidified and cemented the idea that I could do it alone. You know, living alone and going through layoffs or being fired and having to come up with a financial plan. Like you see, I have pets. I've always had pets. So how to keep providing for them and for myself and pay my rent. You know, I started examining why I was friends with people I didn't like. That's another video I've done. Why am I friends with people I don't like? I was surrounding myself because I felt lonely, and I felt them being there to validate me was going to make me feel better about myself or give me a boost of self-esteem. But the truth is they can't give it to you, and it comes from within. And this took a lot of years, a lot of years. It didn't come naturally, you know? And also an idea of feeling alone is that you can also feel that being alone doesn't mean that you're rejected by someone else. Of course, you're going to be rejected by people. You're going to be accepted by people, but that it's okay, that you don't need to have a favorite person, that you don't need to latch on in an unhealthy manner. So I hope that's answered a little bit in part. Sarah, if there's something more I could expand on, email me. Let's go to Sarah's last point of her question. So this is a great one. Sarah asks, and finally, how can you stop obsessing over what people think of you, especially if this person was important to you at one point? My answer to this is pretty simple, but the way to get there is difficult. And that is, I want you to start replacing this following sentence. What do they think about me? I wonder if they like me. Did I do something wrong? How come they haven't texted? And I want you to start replacing those kinds of phrases with these sorts of phrases. I wonder what I think about them. Do I like her? I like me. She's missing out if she's not texting. I'm not sure why I haven't heard from them, but I'm a great person. You are looking for ways to validate yourself. You have given away what you think and feel about yourself, and you have put it out there for other people to validate because you grew up in an invalidating environment. People told you, no, that's not how you feel. No, I'm sorry you think that happened. No, shut up. No one wants to hear from you. Mom, I feel sad. No, you don't. You grew up in an environment where slowly over time, you became so invalidated that the ultimate thing happened to you, that you couldn't trust your own self-perceptions. And so you turn to others to ask them, I did this. Is this okay? I said this or made this decision. What do you think? Well, what would you do in this situation? And I'm here to tell you that you could get 500 different opinions, and none of them are going to give you the right answers, because the answer that you have to feel comfortable with is the one that comes from you. And I have found over time that thinking more about what other people think or getting more than one person's opinion only leads to a lot more emotional dysregulation, which takes you further away from your BP recovery goals. So that's one part of learning how to let go of what other people think of you, is to focus more on what you think of yourself. Another part of this that maybe Sarah is hinting at, but I'm sort of picking up on from my own past experience, is to stop obsessing about, maybe relationships that have gone wrong and what they're thinking about you. Of course my parents were important to me at one point. I wanted them to love and accept me. But over decades, I realized these people are sick. These people are not healthy. I wouldn't talk to these people if I wasn't related to them. And the only way that I'm going to get healthier and better is if I let them go. And that's exactly what I did. And guess what? I got a lot better. And I think that had I stayed entrenched with them, I wouldn't have. I would have, just stayed in that sort of normalized groupthink toxicity. Coming out of a traumatic relationship can really mind fuck you. So, one of these relationships, a romantic relationship that I've had, this guy is just a classic book narcissist, and I just don't throw out that term freely. But, the things that they say over time, the things that they do, the gaslighting, the invalidating, the turning things around, challenging your perceptions, you catching them in the act of doing something, you providing proof like, no, look, I found this on your phone, them saying, I don't know what you're talking about. It's gaslighting, and gaslighting is just another form of invalidation. And so you might start obsessing about that relationship. I did for a long time. Am I what he said I am? Like, why did he like me so much? And then he started saying these mean things, like maybe I am fucked up. Like, why is he calling me crazy? And that is a trauma bond. And I've done a video on trauma bonding, and trauma bonding essentially is a bond that's formed when you are with an abusive person, but intermittently they do something nice for you. So, you may be with someone who never shows up on time, or is financially unstable, or doesn't follow through on their promises, but then every now and then they call you out of the blue and you have a wonderful discussion, and they validate the shit out of your life. And so you develop what this trauma bond is, and it's an unhealthy bond. And the way those kinds of folks look at relationships is transactional, narcissists, I mean. And so it can put you in a state of spiral, wondering and obsessing what happened, like, where did this go wrong? I don't even know what's up and what's down. And of course that person was important to me that I'm speaking about. And of course I thought I loved that person at one point, but now I think that was more of a trauma bond. So I hope, Sarah, and all of the other viewers that have tuned in, I hope that I've been able to answer some of these questions and that they have been helpful to you. Please leave your comments and suggestions below. If you'd like me to elaborate on anything, or if I missed the point altogether, write me a note about that and we'll get it done. My name's Jen. You've been watching BPD Woman. Please like, share, subscribe. And until I speak with you next time, in everything you do, please be effective. Bye-bye.